The Sunset Strip riot of young hippies and their teeny bopper idolizers focused national attention on the alarming increase in drug usage by young people. In April 1967, Caltech, home of the Jet Propulsion Lab, conducted a survey to determine how many of its student body were using drugs. 90% of the student body participated, and 20% admitted they were using drugs, the majority having just started within the last few months. It would appear that even some of our future scientists want to be hip. At Stanford University, we can see the influence of drugs by reading the words painted on this board. When the long hair of Stanford's New Left student body president David Harris was shaved by fun-loving fraternity boys, the New Left posted these signs all over the campus. The signs went uncontested by fraternity men who, in terms of the hipster vocabulary, blew their cool. A visit to San Francisco State College campus is like a journey into an opium den with its clientele plotting the overthrow of our government. This was taken off the bulletin board in the main hall of the college. It calls for volunteers to serve with the Viet Cong and to give medical aid to communists wounded by our American soldiers who are opposing their infiltration of South Vietnam. The slant of lectures at San Francisco State Experimental College must be interesting to hear when bulletin boards carry warnings like this against the FBI. As a result of the Sunset Strip riots, the hippies have become big business in TV programming. The programs, promised big audiences, are ready to capitalize on the degradation of youth. And drug advocates such as Dr. Timothy Leary, the former Harvard professor, will gladly tell nationwide audiences how to tune in, turn on, and drop out. And as long as his advice is taken by his audiences, but not by his public relations people, his lawyers, the major TV networks, or the national magazines that thrust him into national prominence, he'll continue to see gold rather than that psychedelic art on his personal trips. This profit to him, of course, is no solace to the parents of young drug users who have gone blind, or been committed to mental institutions, or become suicide statistics after following Dr. Leary's advice. Not only TV, but magazines, newspapers, and radio shows are cashing in on these social dropouts. They have found that a story on a young drug addict is an antidote for slipping circulation, and a picture of a hippie protesting the war in Vietnam is far more saleable to the public than a picture of a soldier dying to defend the hippie's right to protest. Popular on radio with the hippies is the rambling titled, "San Francisco, be sure to wear some flowers in your hair." The lyrics go, "All across the nation, such a strange vibration, people in motion. There's a whole generation with a new explanation, people in motion. If you come to San Francisco, summertime will be a love-in there." If that doesn't get the kids to run away, the flip side will. Hey, friend, wake up. Pick up a toothbrush and sneak down the stairway. You've got no reason you should stay. Hey, what's the difference if we don't come back? Who's going to miss us in a year or so? Nobody knows us or the things we've been thinking, so what's the difference if we go? The San Francisco song goes on to promise, you're going to meet some gentle people there. Let's look at some of these gentle people. In Berkeley, the international group of anarchist revolutionaries called the Provos will meet the flower children flocking there, feed them, and give them shelter and drugs. The Provos provide the setting for the love-ins the song refers to, every Sunday afternoon in Berkeley's City Hall Plaza, now known as Provo Park. Folk rock bands blast away while free soup is ladled, and runaways from across the nation frolic on the lawn, making ardent love oblivious to onlookers. Bill Miller, Berkeley revolutionist and filthy speech movement veteran, leads the local branch of the Provo International Organization. The Provos, which first appeared in Holland, define their goal as, the Provotariat is made up of subversive elements that definitely provoke. Look out, bourgeoisie, we are on the march to demolish the world. Here, the same Bill Miller leads a demonstration in support of the communist Viet Cong. Other leaders shown here are Mrs. Robert Scheer, wife of Rampart's editor, and communist Steve Cherkos, of the Red Chinese-aligned Progressive Labor Party. Across the bay in San Francisco, the gentle people who provide free food and shelter to runaways are prototypes who call themselves the Diggers. This name is derived from a group of communists in England who tried to establish communal living there. The Diggers are composed of a strange combination of anarchists, black power advocates, pacifists, Leary-type drug dropouts, and the San Francisco Mime Troupe, a group of amateur actors who have gained notoriety for their vulgar and obscene shows. Let us look at some of these flower children who flock by the thousands to San Francisco. These three leave a Digger headquarters located in the basement of the All Saints Episcopal Church in the center of the hippie slums. This same morning, they stole an expensive dog and sold it for $5. They talked to us about it freely. With the money, they bought speed. And when they get back to their pad, they'll inject the drug into their arms. The boy boasts of his recent bad conduct discharge from the Army for refusing to serve in Vietnam. And he has the date of his first LSD trip tattooed on the back of his hand. The girl in dark glasses was attracted to this Haight-Ashbury mecca for hippies from her home in Illinois. The pad they are entering is one of those provided free by the Diggers, and which San Francisco police cite as lures for runaway kids. 200 boys and girls like these are drawn every day to the Haight-Ashbury district alone, and hippie communities like this one are springing up throughout America. Sex and drugs are the two major interests of the hippie community, and venereal disease is one of its most serious problems, as evidenced by this ad in the Oracle Underground newspaper, which encourages kids to have a free checkup at 33 Hunt Street. Venereal disease isn't the only problem. A public health official commented, "Because of the crowded conditions under which the hippies live, we are finding a high percentage of infectious hepatitis. This disease is usually found in food contaminated by the urine and fecus of an infected person. Other problems are body lice, scabies, and internal and external parasites." A man synonymous with the hippie movement is Allen Ginsberg, the erotic poet and homosexual hangover from the Beat generation. Here is Prophet Ginsberg attending a Get Out of Vietnam demonstration with Communist Mike Lasky, Communist Eston Simmons, Communist William Sherman, Communist Ray Marshall, and Jack Weinberg, member of the Communist W.E.B. Du Bois Club and hero of the U.C. Sproul Hall invasion of 1964. Haight-Ashbury is like one big teenage Skid Row. Kids sit and lie in the streets and doorways, many of them high on drugs. An obsession with these youngsters is to dress as bizarre as possible. The big charge is to go to the Goodwill used clothing store, put on the clothes, and go into the streets to panhandle from the tourists. There is such a demand for merchandise catering to the hippie fad that local stores are selling out to enterprises coming in to capitalize on these drug-addicted kids. And the Gray Line tourist buses have run what is called a hippie hop, twice a day for out-of-towners to come and stare at these doped-up kids. A great tourist attraction is the Diggers' free feed every day at 4 o'clock. Small groups of the hippies show up for handouts, but the Diggers claim that soon 200,000 of these hippies will flock to San Francisco to take up this way of life. Another attraction is the Fillmore Auditorium dance put on by Bill Graham, originator of the Mime Troupe. Price of admission to the dance includes pillows for those hippies too high on drugs to stand up. A doctor is always in attendance to help the kids who freak out. That means those who have a bad LSD experience. When the dance is over, the sponsors go around waking up the kids to get them to go home. Some are so high on overdoses they have to be brought down with tranquilizers. If this doesn't work, they're taken to the hospital. The formula that hooks these kids is outlandish. It's the rallying cry of love with a dash of Hopi Indian ritual, some Buddhism, beatnik existentialism mixed with drugs. Here, a leader of the cult takes his followers to an anti-American demonstration. Here, doing his thing, is Charlie Brown Artman, disciple of Timothy Leary and high priest of an LSD cult in the Berkeley area. A speech of Artman's before a noon UC rally defending the public use of an obscene four-letter word was a spark that helped ignite the filthy speech movement. What gives momentum to the hippie movement, and who profits from this insanity? Here is the anti-American Spring Mobilization March against the war in Vietnam, April 1967. The House Committee on Un-American Activities issued a report stating that this march was in control of communists. But this only enhanced the march for the hippies, because anything the committee would be against, the hippies would be for. The parade was dominated by hippies, but here and there, one would find distinguished-looking people like this impressive-looking gentleman waving the American flag, who happens to be Leon Wolfsey, former National Youth Director of the Communist Party and now an associate professor at the University of California at Berkeley. The communists obviously profited. Here you see communist writer Sam Kushner along with party member Steve Murdoch, both staff reporters for the People's World, and obviously thrilled by the 80,000 marchers that paraded up Market Street in San Francisco, furnishing valuable propaganda for the Communist Party. Here is communist photographer Harvey Richards, father of UC student activist Paul Richards, shooting movie film of the march. Investigators learned that thousands of feet of propaganda film left by jet that night for Hanoi. Providing guards for this curious group of demonstrators are the Citizens Alert Patrol from Watts, California. This group was originally formed after the Watts riots by a group of leftist organizations to follow police and observe so-called police brutality. The San Francisco headquarters for the Citizens Alert Patrol is in Glide Memorial Church at Ellis and Taylor, where such wild hippie happenings have taken place that the police have had to raid the church on numerous occasions. The annual budget of this church is $385,000, with 5 full-time clergymen and 14 employees on the staff. This is also the headquarters for the Glide Foundation, worth $7.5 million, and whose director is Reverend Donald Kuhn, also founder and supporter of the Council for Religion and the Homosexual. The fact that left-wing radicals could pack Kezar Stadium with 65,000 people, as shown in the propaganda films, must have a demoralizing impact on our men in Vietnam. Even though the event included several prominent Negro names among the speakers, such as Julian Bond and Mrs. Martin Luther King, few Negroes participated in the demonstration. The most popular book sold to hippies at this infamous demonstration was Mao Zedong's Red Guard Manual. The man looking at our camera is J. Frank, member of the Communist Progressive Labor Party, which is calling for blood in our streets now. This man is dressed in the uniform of the Chinese Red Guard and is also a member of the Communist Party, Marxist-Leninist from Watts, California, and is also selling the popular little red book. Among many young Americans, being defiantly anti-American is strictly in vogue. This young girl sitting in the stands is dressed in the highest fashion. She's wrapped in an American flag, violating both it and her country. The girl standing next to her is a well-known New Left activist, Arlie Tim. And next to her, the progressive labor communist publication, Spark, is being sold by a young man dedicated to the overthrow of our government. Buttons are big business among the hippies. One of the fastest sellers to these customers who claim they are the love generation was a button that read, "Lee Harvey Oswald, where are you now that we need you?" And for those who wanted to get the party line direct from Moscow via Communist Party USA, this booth sells subscriptions to the Communist People's World. While the communists might not be the instigators of the hippie movement, like the dope pushers, the pornography publishers, the filthy record makers, the money-hungry TV sponsors, and even the anti-American lapel button manufacturers, they're cashing in for their own special benefits from the debasement of American youth. Responsibility for this debasement lies in many places. First, in the overly permissive upbringing of our youngsters and the progressive education they were subjected to, making them political and emotional cripples. Part of the blame lies with greedy politicians who, seeing that soon 52% of Americans will be in the under 25 age group, coddle, cater to, and exploit these young people. But guiltiest of all are the parents who don't want to see, who will not say no to their children even when the situation demands it, who, rather than risk losing their child's approval for a day or a week, would rather risk losing the child to drug addiction and moral corruption. Perhaps you haven't seen the Skid Row in which the hippies live, the underground literature, or hippie riots. But you can turn on your radio, turn to the teenage music stations and listen for yourself. For this is the pipeline into every American home. Listen to the lyrics. Decipher the language. You'll say, it couldn't mean that. But it does mean that. This is the steady diet of our young people, fed to them by radio, TV, records, underground papers, direct mail, magazines, street talk, and the in crowd. Not just in isolated areas, but given to American youth in towns and cities across the country. Parents complain that they aren't able to talk to their children. Well, someone is talking to them, and the children are listening and keeping time to what's being said and memorizing the words and singing them and dancing to them and reacting. Thousands are being drawn into this nightmare world of the hippies and become zombie-like vegetables. This is one fad that doesn't end tomorrow. These kids are hooked, most of them to stay, and thousands more are being taken in. In October 1965, the communists staged a demonstration at Berkeley, California, and shocked the nation by managing to attract 13,000 people. In April 1967, they brought in 80,000 people. How many will be there next time? It's your children who are the pawns in the game, and the solution is your responsibility. There are so many young people who have, so far, resisted this tragic onslaught. But how long can they continue to resist? Young America is the future America, and no nation with a generation of dope users can remain strong or even remain free.